It's past time for an update on what I've been doing in the Bioactive Vivarium. This display is built in a majestic reptile enclosure provided by my employer, CustomCages.com. The big addition this month, an awesome new light. So this is a 32-inch Prizm light from Nylock G, and I'm really excited to have this light. The vivarium upstairs, I haven't been 100% happy with the plant growth, and I think that the vivarium is just so deep, and with that perforated aluminum top that's on it, I'm just not getting the par that I need down at the very bottom of the enclosure. I'm not going to invest in a par meter. If somebody has one I can borrow, maybe I'll look. But I've been convinced by people I've talked to that this is a really, really good light, and it will fit on top of that vivarium. I very rarely do unboxings. I did crack this to make sure that everything was whole, but I really haven't pulled anything out. So this is going to be our first look at this light. Instructions. Wow, should be pretty simple to use. Not a lot of instructions. I guess those are the legs. Hangers, won't be using those. More hardware. Here's the remote, we gotta hold on to that. Power cord. These must be the mounting brackets. And then the light itself. It's a pretty heavy light. Certainly has a lot of LEDs on it. And I'll actually share some photos as we go through of the light arrangement in this thing. So let's put this box away, and I'll move the camera and we'll get a little closer look at this light. Now I have this light pretty much figured out. I've got a few more things I need to learn about it, but now I can at least tell you about it. Straight out of the box, you get two sets of instructions. This set of instructions is just how to use the remote control to set the timers. On the other side, it kind of tells you what the LCD panel says and what it means. But that's basically all this is. This is just for using the remote control. This set of instructions is just for the mounting brackets and the hanging system. So that's all this other stuff that you see down here. And it's really pretty straightforward. I mean, this is the bracket that goes on the side of the aquarium. These are the locking nuts that would then apply some pressure to hold that in place. These are the legs that go inside the bracket like that, and then the other end goes inside the sides of the unit and holds it up over the tank. And what I kind of like about this system is you've got this short side and you've got this long side, so you've got some options for how high off of the aquarium you want it to be, or the vivarium where you want it to be. So the light itself, if I have one criticism just getting it out of the box, it's that there is not an instruction set for what the diodes are, what the dials are, and how to adjust the light for the color or color spectrum that you want. It is not controlled on the remote control. The only thing the remote control can do is set the timers and turn the different lights on and off. The intensity of the lights is set with these dials. You've got a master switch. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And when I turn it on, lights are going to come on. Then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to turn them off. Okay. Then you turn the dials on, and as soon as I turn the dials, they're going to come on as well. So I'm going to start with the white side. This is what's called white light on the LCD panel. Now I should tell you, you can actually change the name of those. You don't have to call them white, blue, and moonlight. You can actually change them to color 1 or color 2, or light 1, light 2, or early day, late day, whatever you want to do, you can change it. If I turn that on, you're going to see that what comes in as white light, it's got white diodes, and it's got green diodes. That looks like a yellow diode, and this looks like a red diode. You're going to have to forgive me because I'm slightly red and green colorblind, and the difference between this diode and that diode, it kind of changes as I look at it, and I probably see it completely differently than the way you do. I definitely don't see it the way plants do. But anyway, you can turn this way up real high. I'm going to turn it up slowly so that it doesn't blow out the camera. And I think you'll get a better idea of the intensity of this whenever we get it on the vivarium. But that's full power right there. I'm going to turn it down again. And then I'm going to turn it off using the remote control. So there's white off. And then here comes what's called the blue. And this is where most of your red, blue, and green diodes are. So you can see there's blue, there's red, there's green, and there's also some white in there as well. And you can turn that up really high. And then once they're on, you can use the remote control to turn them on and off. So there's blue off. Here's moonlight. And it's only one setting for moonlight. That's going to come in handy if I want to be able to see in the vivarium at night. But you can turn on the white by itself. You can turn on the blue and the white together. Or you can have just the blue by itself. But what you can't do with the remote control is adjust the intensity of the different colors from the remote. That can only be done with the dial. Here, I'm going to turn off the blues. The timer, with the LCD and what's on here, the timer can set different timers for the white channel and the blue channel. So you don't have to have them come on or shine at the same time. So if you wanted to have a dawn period where you have a lower amount of light for an hour, then have the other lights come on, you can do that, followed by a dusk schedule. You can do that again, but the only thing you can't do is change the intensity of the light during those photo periods, because you have to do that manually with the dials on the front of the unit. So my first impression of this light is that it's extremely well built. It's a nice solid piece of hardware. It's a pretty impressive piece of technology. I can't wait to see what it looks like on top of the vivarium. The timers are going to be great. And I think that once I have the color spectrums that I want dialed in, I'm not going to be worried at all about not being able to change the intensity of the different light channels with the remote whenever I need to be able to do that. I can just get up on top and use the dials if I have to. Most of the other lights that I've been familiar with, the other lights from different manufacturers that have 3-channel control and different color diodes, allow you to change the color spectrum from the remote. So that's the biggest difference between this light and some of those others. But I can tell you from right now, I'm much happier with what I'm seeing with this light than I have been with a lot of those other lights. This is going to be really sturdy, and this is really, really bright. So let's go get it on the vivarium and see how it looks. So the only thing that I've done to prepare this light to go on the vivarium is I've taken the brackets that you would normally use on the edge of an aquarium, and I've used some double-sided contact strips to kind of stick them to it. And then this is going to hold the light up off of the top of the vivarium, and I should have plenty of room to get plenty of spread through that perforated aluminum. If it doesn't work, then I'll take this off and I'll go ahead and mount this higher up on top of the vivarium. So let's get it up there and see what happens. All right. Look at that. Sits down in there just perfect. And I'll get the camera off and show you what this looks like from up here in a minute. All right, so now you can see how much room I've still got up here. I won't have any problem putting in a UVB light right here, right over top of the stick where I want the animals to be able to bask at some point. And I still got plenty of room that I can actually move this a little bit and get it more towards the center of the enclosure. That is pretty bright. It is a lot brighter than what we had up there. So I'm really very excited about it. Right. So before we actually put new plants in, let's go and take a look at how some of the first plants we put in are doing. Some of them are doing really, really well. Some are just starting to get started. Probably the fastest growing plant in here is the Begonia thelme. This one is just starting to really spread out. I really like it. I'm not really sure what's happening to this one right here. It's kind of lost some of its color and it's kind of yellow. I will note that this was one that I purchased at a local store, and these are the ones that came from my friend Karen and my friend Nick, and they're doing much, much better. But maybe it's just that this one was planted a little bit differently. I'm not sure. This is not doing as well as these other stems. Matter of fact, this one's starting to get so big that one of the places I was planning on putting another plant today was right here. So I may actually have to start cutting clippings out of this thing. Wow, wouldn't that be novel? The big Neoregalia bromeliad has put out a pup, and that pup is pretty much almost as big as the smaller Neoregalias that I've got. I'm really hoping that this new brighter light is going to create more red color in the Neoregalias. This one is interesting. It still hasn't really opened up. It's still relatively closed, and same with this one. And I'm wondering it's because they're so close to the light. I'll have to find out about that, and if that's the case, maybe I'll have to move those down so they'll open up a little bit more. The orchids are all doing great. This is the Colombian orchid, and it's got lots of new air roots coming in. This leaf is new. This leaf has grown quite a bit. The unknown orchid with the little hair-like leaves has put up several new leaf shoots and some new air roots as well. That's doing really well. But the one I'm most excited about is this little orchid right here. It's got 2 flower spikes. So there's one right there. And if I can get my finger back here, right there's a flower spike. And then this is just one just started, just the day before yesterday, it popped out. A little teeny flower spike right there. I think this is Oncidium. I asked my friend for clarification as to what kind of orchid this was. This one is also getting lots of new air roots in it. The pitcher plant continues to do extremely well. It has put up probably a new leaf once every other week or so. This leaf just opened up last week. This one is already on its way up. The pitchers are all in really good condition. I was really starting to worry about whether the Cissus discolor was going to actually grow or not. It took almost a month before it started to do anything, and all of a sudden last week it just started to explode. So maybe with this new light it's going to explode even faster. Not so much so with the Cissus amazonicus. This one hasn't really taken off yet. I think maybe it has to do with it. It's actually kind of growing in the sphagnum moss wedged into the plant, so there's not as much nutrient for the plant as there is down here in the bottom. But eventually I think it'll take off as well. It's starting to grow. The plants I'm going to put in the vivarium today are just 4. There's already some Cissus discolor in the vivarium, but I'm going to go ahead and put these next to it so I can get more of that vining effect. This one I'm really excited about. This is the Monolema species Ecuador. I was going to put it in the vivarium a couple weeks ago, but it bloomed, and I'll show you a picture of the bloom. It was really pretty. This has got a really cool crinkled edge to the leaf, and it's got a bright red underside and dark green on the top side, and it should become a really nice centerpiece plant growing up out of the substrate in the vivarium. Now the last 2 that I'm going to put in are shinglers. This is Ficus villosa, and you can look at all these little air roots that's put out. I imagine I'm going to be able to put this up in the middle of the canopy and not have to worry about it being down in the substrate, because it's really been putting in a lot of these little roots to grow onto things. And then this one I'm really excited about. This is the Rhaphidophora cryptantha, and it's put on a whole lot of new growth, but it's not the kind of growth that I want. I want the kind of growth that looks like this. And to get it to do that, it's got to be growing up against a flat surface. So it's time to get this into the vivarium. The first plant that's going to go in is this Ficus villosa. But to put it where I want to put it, I've decided that this Cissus amazonica is not going to stay here. It's just not doing very well. So it's going to come out. I'm actually going to go put it back in the growth chamber, and I might do something else completely different with that plant. It just has it. Well, let's put it in some roots. I really think it probably needs to be down in the substrate. So I'm going to do something else with that plant. Just don't know what yet. Now, this plant, I'm going to put where that was, right like this. The next ones going in are the Rhaphidophora, and to do that I'm just going to take this whole clump of moss and I'm going to shove it deep in this little crevice like that. Now, one of the debates has been whether or not these things need to be in substrate or not, and I don't think they do, because I was growing this in the growth chamber just in moss. We're just going to go right here next to the other Cissus discolor. I've got two of those. And even though the leaves are pretty small, they've actually started to root in pretty well. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the roots they've got. The Monolema species Ecuador, I'm not going to plant in the middle of the enclosure. I'm going to plant it over here on the side of the enclosure. And hopefully it's going to make a nice accent plant over here. Oh, it broke off a bloom. I don't know if there's any seeds in there or not. I don't think so. The Prizm LED light has been on the enclosure now for about 3 days, and so far I'm extremely happy with it. It's given me exactly what I want, which is a better quality of light, color spectrum of light, and a much greater intensity of light. Right now, this system is set up only on 40% of its possible light intensity. I've turned it up as high as it can go, and you can barely look at it. It's far too bright. I am going to ramp up the light intensity probably to about 60 or 70% of its maximum over a period of a month or so, as I don't really want to burn the plants. And if I start seeing any negative reaction to plants, I'll have to back it back down. This light was designed to go over a freshwater aquarium. So to be able to get a high par through water, it's got to be very, very intense. But without water, I don't have any of that problem. So this is a 48-inch tall enclosure. It's about 40 inches, 38 inches down to the substrate, but a lot of the plants are much higher than that. So they're going to get an awful lot of light. I'd like to thank Nylock G for the opportunity to work with this light. They did give me a little bit of a discount so that I can share it with you. And I look forward to seeing how it does on this enclosure. I will tell you, I would not hesitate to buy more of these lights, and hopefully I'm going to have a planted aquarium project starting sometime later this year, and this will be the light that I decide to go with. There are a couple of things I would like to see improved on this light over time. I do understand that the cost of development for pieces of technology like this can be very, very high. But one thing I would like to see is a more remote control of the unit itself. Right now, you use the remote to set the timers, and the timers work very, very well. But you use knobs to set the intensity. It would be nice to be able to control the intensity from the remote. But one advantage of having the knobs is it's very easy to see what the intensity is at and actually see the intensity side by side if one channel is going to be higher intensity than the other intensity. So it kind of works pretty well. The other thing that I would like to see is an internal ramp timer so that you can start at 0 light intensity and over a period of an hour or so ramp all the way up to your full light intensity like a dawn and go opposite at the end of the day like a dusk. You can actually kind of mimic a dawn or dark cycle using the 2 channels of color that are provided, or 2 channels of light that are provided on this unit. And I'm going to demonstrate that for you. So the way my day starts on this enclosure, I'm going to turn these off, is it's dark, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, I have the blue light channel. So I'm still calling it that. That's what the unit called it out of the box. I have that come on for about an hour, and then that kind of wakes the enclosure up. And then I have the brighter white lights come on and last for about 8 hours during the day. And then the white lights go off, and then the blue lights go off about an hour later. So I'm getting that dawn and that dusk effect, but it's not just a gradual ramp up, which I just kind of like the way it kind of looks. People have asked me, when am I going to get animals in this enclosure? Still no hard set plans for animals. The challenge is that the plants are not established enough, and they're not as thick and growing as I want them to be, which is one reason I got this new light. So hopefully here in a month or so, I'll be more comfortable with the growth of the plants in the enclosure, and I'll start thinking about animals. Right now, still leaning towards Phelsuma, towards day geckos. This enclosure gets a little drier than I expected it to. Right now, especially with this light, because there is a fan on the light, it's generating a little more heat and a little more air movement, which is not a bad thing. But I've noticed that my humidity levels are dropping a little lower than I had it before with those other lights. I'll have to increase the amount of fogging that I do and make sure that I spray every day. And as I mentioned much earlier in this process, someday I may have to put a mister on this enclosure, but that's not going to happen this day either. I really would like to avoid having to put a mister on it. I'd like to remind everybody that this enclosure is a majestic reptile enclosure from my employer, CustomCages.com, who has made it possible for me to be able to do this project and use this enclosure, and I thank them for that opportunity. It's a really nice enclosure, and it's working out really, really well. So that is it for the July update on the Bioactive Vivarium. I don't know if there's going to be any big changes in August, and if there are, I'll do an August update, or I may just hold over and do one later in September. But once again, thank you for watching Ted's Fish Room, and I hope to see you next time.